Okay, so you guys have exercise 121, which is what we're going to do today. And that, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to translate this two-dimensional plan into what the elevations would look like from it. And I'm going to pursue this in a far more old-school manner than might be normal. In the normal phase of operations, and I showed you guys this briefly. I should have opened it already for today. But in the today's era, a lot of times we'll build the 3D object first. So we'll model it up in 3D and then slice up the plans and get our building elevations out of it. But for the sake of AutoCAD, we're going to do it kind of the opposite way. So you guys started with a floor plan, and you obviously are going to need to create the elevation views. I went ahead and I modeled this up really quickly in Rhino just so you could have a sense of what my building is and what it's basically looking like. And I'm going to end up drawing this elevation today, which, if I look at it in the 3D model view, looks something like this. So I end up having to draw it. Obviously, if we model it in 3D, it's much easier to take this, convert it into an elevation, and then we have our building elevation, do a few tweaks to it, etc. The good news is we'll cover how do you do that from SketchUp back in, back this direction later on in the semester. So we're kind of doing it from both ways. The truth is, what we're going to do in the world of AutoCAD is a lot like what you would do if you were drafting. And so if you had to draw this building by hand, this is how you would go about doing it. And so it's a good practice to kind of get in with, get used to, just mentally to be able to work through your building. The truth is that while I was designing or drawing up this building, I had a very good idea of what I thought the elevations would look like, what I thought the spaces would feel like. And the more and more that you design and you get kind of in this realm, you're going to learn how to do this in your head while you're actually drawing. So you'll see these views. So I don't need the 3D view to understand what this building elevation is because I have it in my head. And I'm not expecting that you guys at this level would necessarily have that in your head. If you started with a plan and you ended up with a pretty good plan, I'm pretty happy. So it may be a little bit of a surprise as to what the building looks like today, but maybe not. And so we're going to work by folding out the elevations, and I'll show you how I would go about doing it. How many of you have taken 130 already, the drawing class? So you guys understand the relationship between top, front, and right side, theoretically, because they should have covered that in this class. We're going to do essentially the same thing with this plan view. So what I need to do is I need to start with some basic guidelines, and I'm going to use two different types of guides today. One is called a construction line or an X line, and the other is called a ray. And I'll use both of those independently, and I'll explain the difference between them. But I'll use them to kind of identify where certain key parts of my building lie. So before I get started, I'm going to go up to the Layer Properties button here. Remember, if this is not showing, if the drafting and annotation view is not showing for you, which some of the computers don't do that by default, you can change it by changing the workspace from 3D Basics to drafting and annotation. If you don't see drafting and annotation there, click on the little triangle at the end of whatever you see at that top row, and you can check the box for workspace, and this will then appear so that you can be in drafting and annotation mode, and your screen will look like my screen. So now that I have that showing, I'm going to look in this middle section here for layers, and I'm going to choose Layer Properties, which is going to bring up my Layer Properties Manager. And once that is up, I need to establish a few layers for what I'm doing. The first one is going to be the south elevation. So I'm assuming that I've drawn this with north up, which is how it was intended to be. The south elevation would be this side. So I will make a elevation or a layer called south elevation. Now we could be a little bit more technical. I could say A-south elevation or something if we wanted to do naming conventions. But for right now, south elevation is just fine. And then I'm also going to make another layer called guides. And I will, in all likelihood, create 3, 4, 5, 6 layers called guides 1 through 6 down the road. But for right now, we'll start with just the basic guides layer. I'm going to change the guides layer color to be red. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make sure that the guides layer does not print, because I don't want the guides ultimately to print. And I'll also make it the current layer by double-clicking on it and I get the little green check mark next to my guides layer. So with that as the current layer, and the color is red and it being a non-printing layer, I'm going to go ahead and start to create some guidelines for myself. And so if I were drawing this building, and I will flip back and forth and kind of reference the 3D view because I think it can be helpful for you to see that I already kind of have a model. I have a 10-foot high ceiling here. I've got a 12-foot high ceiling here. Back down to, oh, excuse me, this is 12 feet. No, 10, 12, 10, and 16. Okay? So when I jump back into the world of AutoCAD, right here, I need some way of identifying where those transitions happen. And so if I look at this building, I have these corners, and I'm going to use what's called a ray to draw an infinite line that starts at this point and just goes straight down. And so I'll type ray into the command line, and I'm going to specify that it starts right here at the corner, and it goes straight down. So I click once to start, I move my mouse down, and I have ortho on so I can't get it off in angle, and I'll click, and that then creates a ray. And if I were to zoom out, you can see that it just keeps going forever. And that's the idea. So I'll come up here, and I'll repeat the ray command from this corner of the building, going down. I'll repeat it from this corner of the building, going down, this corner here, going down, and this piece right there, going down. So now I have these infinite lines going off into space that direction. And actually, while I draw this, I'm going to go ahead and turn the topography off so it doesn't confuse you. I'll turn that off. OK, so now what I need to do is I need to establish basically a ground plane that would be the interior floor level. That's usually the easiest way of describing it. And I can do that in the opposite direction by using a ray. So I could be somewhere over here. I could start a ray, and I could go off in this direction. Now when I do that, it goes off infinitely in the right direction, but not in the left. The other type of construction line or guideline that you may want to use is called an X-line. And what an X-line does is it goes in both directions rather than just one. So I click a place where I want to start, and I move to one side or the other, and you see that this now goes in both directions in an infinite manner. Okay, so I'm using that to my advantage. Okay, so we'll assume for the moment that this is the interior floor level of the building. So knowing that, I can start to draw out kind of the general boxes of this particular building. So I'll switch my layers to the south elevation layer, and I'll come over and use my line tool, and I'll draw this first little entry. It goes up 12 feet or 10 feet, and I'll come across to right there, and I'll enter. I'll draw this box, which starts there and goes up 12 feet and goes over to there and back down. My next line, I'll come over to here. This goes up 16 feet and over and back down. Okay? I have one more little line in here that's even with this line. So I can set a point, come across, and I'll draw that line right there as well. So now, if I were to turn off my guides temporarily, right, we can see that I have the general outline of what my building is going to look like. Now, I did this particular building with a flat roof. I chose a flat roof because it tends to be the easiest to model, obviously. If you want to do something with a pitched roof, that's not a problem. What I would encourage you to do is to draw basically a floor and a ceiling at about 8 feet. Do all 4 of the elevations, and then I can help you construct the hip or valley roof depending on what you're trying to do once you have the elevations drawn. It's easier to do it in that order rather than try to do it all at once. Okay, so now that I have these kind of established, I'll turn back on my guides, and I need to add another layer of detail. So if I look at this particular section, I have a wall and a wall that I can see. Then I step back, and I have a few little columns that are skinny that go up inside. And I'd like to be able to draw that right here. So I will once again switch my layer to be on guides, and I'll use ray from right there and from right there. Now, I would recommend when you're doing these sorts of things not going overboard in terms of drawing all the rays at once from every point. You notice that I did just the corners and I drew down on the elevation. Then I came back up here and I'm doing just these two lines and I'll draw. Then I'll add the center lines for the windows and then I'll draw. If I were to do all the guides at once, it would be hard to tell which guide corresponds to what thing. So it just helps to simplify a little bit. So let me go ahead and I'll come back down here. And I know that the thickness of my roof here, I'm going to do it at 1 foot. So in this case, I'll go up 11 feet. Oops. Hold on a second. I need to switch my layer back to the south elevation layer. We'll start right here. I'll go up 11 feet. Nope. How about 15 feet? Helps if I can do math. 15 feet. Then I'll come over and I'll come back down to right there. Now I'll come back with the guides layer active and do a few more rays. One will be right there. Be right there. There. Oops. And there. So now I have those guides for the little columns. Okay? They're really more frames in between the windows than anything else, but we'll go ahead and draw them anyway. And I'll go ahead and use my line tool, and I'll go right up there. Oops. Again, I didn't change my layer, so let's go ahead and change that after the fact to be my south elevation. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. It's the same line all the way across, so it'll save a few more steps to just run across and make my copies. So I've gone ahead and I've drawn those. So if I were to turn off my guides layer here, oops, sorry, let me switch back to the south elevation. Let me turn off guides. So you can start to see that I'm creating the building elevation. Okay? So I'm going to continue on with a few more of my windows. Let me turn back on my guides. I'll make that layer active. And we'll do these windows above the sink. So once again, I'll come back and I'll do a ray. And we'll go down, down. All right, there we go. Okay, so now I know that I want to go up above, so in these particular windows are above a kitchen counter. So a kitchen counter would be at 36 inches. So we'll maybe go at 42 inches, 6 inches above the counter. That seems like a good place for the sill. So I'll go ahead and draw a line. Oh, once again, let me switch to my south elevation layer. And I'll start here and I'll come up, I hope. Nope, we'll just draw it up here. 42 inches. And I'll just draw a line across. Technically, this could be on the guides layer, because I'm just going to use it as a guide. Now, I also know that my ceiling height, same as this, is going to be down a foot. And if I wanted the glass to go all the way to the ceiling, I could draw it to right there. If I wanted it to be a little bit lower with a different head height, that would be okay too. Again, it's whatever your particular preferences would be. So let me just take this piece and I'll offset it by 1 foot, like that. And now I'll go ahead and use the rectangle tool, which is available up here under Draw, to draw a rectangle that represents the window. And I'll repeat. And to repeat, I'm just right-clicking. And now I've drawn each of those windows. Oops. And we can get rid of those extra lines. And so you can see that I now have those windows laid out. Now, in all reality, these windows probably have a little frame. So this would be the opening in the wall, and they're going to have a little frame. So maybe I'll do an offset of maybe 2 inches. Let's do 1.5 inches, which you guys have already done before. And I'll offset these windows such that they have a little frame around them. Something like that. Yeah?
I'm sorry, you
a command, you right-click. Right. Now, I have mine, the computer's set so that when I right-click, it immediately repeats the last command. It's possible, depending on who's worked on your computer, that you have that. It's also possible that when you right-click, you'll get a little pop-up menu, and the first item will be repeat last command. And so it's one extra click. It depends on, yeah, you have the little pop-up menu come up, which is a customization that you can learn. Way back when I learned AutoCAD in whatever, release 11 or something, a long time ago, right-click was just automatically repeat the last command. Those kind of pop-ups didn't even exist at the time. So that's something that's new, and I just have that held over in my brain. So anyway, I have these windows drawn. I probably need to draw some frames on these windows as well, but I'm not going to have you sit there and watch me draw the frames on those windows. But I do need to do a few more things. One is that I have windows that are here in the bathroom that need to be drawn. So I'll switch to my guides layer once again, and I'll use the ray command, and I'll start here and go down. I'll start here and go down, and that's going to represent the center of those windows, right? And these windows go all the way to the wall over here. So they're a little bit different in their style. They are once again above the bathroom counter, kind of all the way across here. And actually, I'm noticing right now that my tub is in backwards, because obviously you can't have a window and have a shower at the same end. All right, so we'll flip that. It looks more like that. And then we'll go ahead and draw on these windows. So I'll start again with a line, and I'm going to pull this window across to be even in height there, and we'll go to there. Now, this probably should have been on the south elevation layer. So once again, when I switched my layer, I just selected the object, came up to this drop-down menu, and selected the layer I wanted it to go on. And so let me go ahead and draw one more line right there to there. Oops, I still didn't change my layer. South elevation. Go ahead and switch to south elevation. There we go. And so this was my roof. I want to go down by a foot. So once again, I can go down. Now let me just offset. That'll be easier. Offset 1 foot. There it is. And then I'll go ahead and draw a line from here to there, and a line from here to there. And I need to trim off that one little piece, so I'll go to Trim, and I will get rid of that piece as well. So these also need frames around them, so I can use the Offset command again, and this time we'll do 1.5 inches. Like that. Now, in this context, I could use the trim. You can see that that line goes way over this line. I could use the trim command to trim up those corners, certainly, but it's a lot of clicks to get rid of the pieces that I want. So I'm going to show you another trick that I use all the time, and it's a fillet. And so if I type F-I-L-L-E-T, right, or I go up to this right here, it's the same thing. And this fillet is actually designed, if I type R for radius, I can specify a particular radius. So it's designed, let me put in 4 inches for right now, to take two lines and connect them with an arc, something like that. See how that arcs the corner? I don't want an arc. I want them to come together at 90 degrees. So I'm going to use the same command, but I'm going to set the radius of the fillet. So I'll click on fillet, I'll type R for radius, and I will specify a radius of 0. And when I do that, I can take these two lines and have them come together in a point. I can do the same thing over here, so those two come together in a point. So if you have two lines in space that cross that you want to come and meet at a nice point, this is a really quick and easy way to make sure that they meet. And it doesn't matter if they're at right angles. So I could be, out over here somewhere, and I can have 2 points, something like that, and I want them to come together at a point. Fillet. Again, the radius stays at 0 because I haven't changed it, and they'll come together at a nice little point. Okay? It could even be such that I have one line that's way over another line, something like this, and when I fillet them, it will get rid of all that excess line and still have them come at a nice point right there. So it's a really quick cheater way, so to speak, to get these lines to come together. So I'm going to do that fillet on these corners there, and I'll work my way through. Again, I'm right-clicking to repeat the last command. Like that. And so now I have those drawn. Now maybe these, I drew them initially as sliding windows, so they really probably need a little division in the center. So we'll go ahead and divide this window. And let me do an offset. I don't know, let's do 1 inch. There and there. And since these slide, I'll carry one of the lines to the top and the bottom. I'll get rid of this. And one more trim. And we'll trim that. So essentially one of these windows is on top of the other. If you go this far, that's great. If you don't, it's no big deal. I'm going to mirror this so that I don't have to redraw it on that side. And then I also have to do a trim on this side as well. So we'll get rid of this piece there, and we'll get rid of this piece there. Okay, so I have that drawn. The last piece is this little entry. So same thing, I'm going to come down a foot. So actually, I'll just go ahead and offset it by 1 foot. There. And I'll offset this side by 6 inches. So we'll offset 6 inches right there. And again, I'll fillet these two together. Okay, so now I've established what this elevation generally looks like. If I were to turn off the guides, we can see the elevation. Notice, however, I haven't put any kind of ground in this yet. And I've deliberately chosen not to put the ground in yet because I have to take into account the topography. And if the part when I go through and deal with the topography ends up going over your head, you can very simply draw a line somewhere down here below the building, and that can be your ground. Okay, for the sake of this class, I'm okay with that. But I do want to show you how you would actually go through and figure out what the ground looks like or what the topography looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and I'll do that twice because I'm going to do one of the side elevations too. So you'll get to see me do it twice. So in order to do this topography line, I'm going to create another layer called Guides 2 because I Guides 1 and Guides 2. So let me go ahead and do Guides 2. I'll make the color different. I don't know, let's make it orange. And again, it's a non-printing layer, which is what I want. And we'll make it the active layer. All right. Let's try that again. Ah, it's frozen. That's why. Sorry. Let me thaw it. We'll make it the active layer. Now, of course, if I'm going to deal with the terrain, I have to turn on the topography to begin with. So let's go ahead and turn on that topography again. There it is. So I have my building, and it's sitting on the ground. And I told you last time what the contour interval was. So what do you guys remember? It's 1 foot in between each of these lines. So if I were looking at this building elevation, the elevation is a flat drawing that's taken right at the point that's closest to you. Okay? So if I were to draw a line that went across right here, that would be the point at which I was taking my elevation. So what I'll do, just to kind of give us a sense of where that is I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a bounding box around my building. So it's going to completely contain my building, and so I'll go to this side right there, and this point right here, and I'll come to where those two meet right there. And so now my rectangle completely contains my building with no extra space. Right? So it always touches a point on each side. It's even there, and it comes across to right there. The elevation view is taken from each of these 4 sides of the rectangle. Does that kind of make sense? Okay? So if I'm dealing with what the topography looks like as it goes across my building, I need to take that topography line right coplanar with this line, or collinear with this line. So I'm going to use my X line, or my construction line, to start in the middle here and go in both directions that way. Okay, so I have a line that goes in infinite in both of those directions. And I'm going to make some vertical marks using the ray command at each place where it crosses a contour. So it crosses one right there. It crosses one right here. It crosses one right here. And it crosses one right here. And you'll have to judge how many to do. Minimum, you should do 4, right? Maximum is maybe 5 or 6, because you really don't need more information than that. As it is, this is probably too much information, but we want a nice gentle slope to this anyway. Okay, so now that I have that information, I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to turn off the topography altogether. Right? And I'm doing that on purpose because I don't want you to get confused with the topography lines anymore. So I've identified where the topo lines hit at each of these points that is collinear or in the same plane as my elevation. So now I'll start with a construction line, so an X line, somewhere down below my elevation. And it doesn't really matter where. And we'll draw it there. Then I'll take this line, and because the contour interval is every 1 foot, I will offset it by 1 foot going up. So we'll say there's my first one, there's my second one, and there's my third one. Okay? So now I need to actually draw in the contour intervals, and I'm going to use a tool called a spline. And it's available right here. It's called a spline fit, or you could just type spline. But I want this to be on the south elevation layer. So we'll make that current, and then I'll choose spline. And I'm going to go at the lowest point right here to start. I'll go up 1 level to that point. I'll go up 1 level to this point. And I'll go up 1 level to that point. And I'm starting at the low point here because this is the lowest contour that I crossed. So I go up that direction. So let me take this white line, because I know it's a little hard to see, and let me add some thickness to it. So I'll go to a nice thick line. So that white line now represents the ground, right? The gentle slope that's going to be next to my building. So I can take that white line and I can move it up toward my building. So let me go ahead and type move, and I'll move it up toward my building. Now the only thing that matters is I can't cross this line of my floor unless my building was buried. So I just want to move this up such that this is relatively close to but does not cover that corner of my building. Okay? Now I'll take each of these lines, and I can do one of two things. One, I can just click on the end points of them and drag them below my line like that, and then I can trim them off. So I can type trim there, and I can get rid of this and get rid of this so that those lines nicely meet where I want. Or, let me go back. That's not going to let me. Let's see. There we go. Or I can use the opposite of trim, which is extend. And I bet it's hidden underneath this little triangle. There it is, extend. And so extend is going to say select objects or select all. So I'm going to say select objects. And actually, I don't want these interior objects right there, because they're going to end right there at the floor level. The windows don't continue past the floor. Okay, so I've hit all of those objects. I'll hit enter. It's going to say extend, and when I click on each of these, it will push the lines down to wherever it meets this diagonal line. So we'll go to right there, and we'll go to right there. I need one more line. I'll finish with one more line that goes across, because I said this was going to be at floor level right there. And now that's done. Okay, I do also have a little landing here with some stairs, so I should draw that in as well. It's going to be at floor level, so we'll pull the floor level line across like that. And then let me take this end and pull it over to right there. This has a couple stairs, so I'll offset this by maybe 6 inches going down. And that one's covered up, so we'll go ahead and delete that one like that. Okay? So I've established what the slope is on my particular building site. It's relatively gentle, right? Which is obviously the idea. And if I look out here, I have way more slope than I really need. So in reality, I could probably trim off parts of this so that it wasn't quite as long. I could draw a line there, and I could draw a line there, and I could type trim. And I could get rid of that section and that section, just so it wasn't hanging out there quite so long. If you don't get rid of it, it's no big deal. So I now have the south elevation drawn of my building. Now I want to move on, and I can draw either the southwest elevation or the east elevation. The east elevation is totally not exciting in this particular building. It's basically a rectangle, and I didn't even put any windows in it. So I'm not going to draw that elevation. I'm going to draw the east elevation over here, right? North, south, east, west elevation. Sorry. I'm going to draw the west elevation. And so I'll start again with another guides layer. So we'll create a new layer, and we'll call this guides 3. Again, it should be non-printing. It's on, and I want the color to be something different. So we'll do maybe blue this time. And we can turn off the guides 2 layer, just so we don't get confused. And I am, however, going to start pulling lines going this way. And so this is something that may or may not be easy for you to do, because it depends on whether you can draw a building sideways. Okay? For somebody like me that has a lot of experience, I can draw it sideways or upside down. It makes no difference, because my brain just flips it, and it doesn't matter. For you, it will be much harder to draw it on one side or the other, or upside down. And so I'll show you how to draw it sideways, but then I'll also show you the workaround if you feel uncomfortable drawing it sideways, as to how to make it a little bit easier on yourself. Okay? So I'll start by drawing this sideways. And actually, maybe I should draw the west elevation sideways, because it's really easy, and then we'll do the east elevation and make it a little harder. So let me do the west elevation instead. So once again, I need a layer, and we'll call this layer west elevation. No, east elevation. Sorry, it's been a long day. All right, and let's use my guides 3 layer. Excellent. And east elevation, we need that to be white. Perfect. Okay, so this building has a relationship. And if you guys remember back to your 130 class, you know that I can pull my lines off this direction to create, right, the same thing that I was doing, pulling them down. So I'll go ahead and type ray, and I'll go from here that way, and I'll go from here this way. Now I'd like to be able to use the height of this building, including where it touches the corner of the topography here. And in order to do that, I need some kind of a line that I can reflect across. Do you guys kind of remember that concept from 130 a little bit? And so what I have to do, and this is absolutely critical, is I have to go to one of the corners of my bounding box. And so I'm going to redraw that bounding box that I had before, that started right there and went to here and went to there, like that. And it happens to be on the same point as the corner of the building. But if it were over here, I'd have to go from this point, right? Because we have to be consistent about where we're reflecting. So I'm going to start and create a ray from this corner. So I'll type ray, and I'll go in this corner. Now, I know that I want it to be at an angle, but I don't know what that angle is. Okay? If it were here, I know it would be 45. But this would be either negative 45, or if we drew out, oh look, I still have it from earlier today. Right? If we drew out, well, that's a great pen. Right? If we started here, this would be 0. Right? We'd be going up. This would be 45. Right? We keep going. This would be 90. And we keep going around 225. We keep going. 45, 270 plus 45 would be 315, right? So I want to be able to type in that value. And so because I have dynamic input on, this little button here, right, I can choose either a length or a degree for array. So I'm going to press the Tab key, and you can see that the little blue text moves over, and I can now specify 315 as my angle. I'll press Tab when I'm done, and I now know that I'm locked at that 315. And I can now click, and I have a line that's at the correct angle to fold across. So now I can use my ray from there at the top of my building. Let me turn back on ortho there. And I can continue going off in this direction. And I can also use it at the floor line. Doesn't really matter here, but we'll go ahead and do it. And I can reflect this one across like that. And so if I were to go to my east elevation, I could go ahead and draw there, to there, to there, and back to there. I could also show exactly where this crosses, this little piece of topography. So I could do a ray from there. I could do a ray right there. And I know that this corner would end up going to right there. Now I'd have to do a little bit more calculation to get the rest of my topography for this side. So we'll wait for just a second on that until I get a little bit further along. So for some people, drawing on their side and tipping their head over to kind of look at it is a little bit on the challenging side. And so one of our solutions is instead to turn every layer on. So everything's on. And then I can select everything. So Control A selects everything. And then I can rotate using the rotate command, right, again around one of the corners of my bounding box. So I'll pick this corner, and then I'll type 90, and then enter. And everything rotates over 90 degrees, including all of my guides. If you have a layer that's on, or if you have a layer that's off, it's not going to rotate. So we want to make sure that you turn everything on before you do this, and then you can go back through and turn off the guides that didn't matter anymore. And we can start drawing and pulling down this elevation. Okay, so let me go ahead and work on this elevation. So this is going to be my west elevation. So we'll create a new layer called west elevation. And I'm just going to use the same guides, the guides 3 layer, because they're on the opposite side. I don't think it'll be too confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my points just as I did before. So I'll do a ray from this corner, going in that direction, from this corner, going in that direction, from this corner, that corner, that corner, that corner, and that corner. So again, I'm starting with just those corners. Now I do need to know where to start with the elevation, so I need that reflecting line again. So I'm going to start it from the bounding box. Remember, the corner of the bounding box, not the corner of the building. It won't work if you do it that way. So we'll go right from here, and the degree of it, let me turn off this, was tab 315. There's tab again, and then I'll click to make that line, and then hit enter. Okay, so I have that next reflecting line right there, and I can pull across my various heights. So we can pull across a height. Let me turn back on ortho mode here. For that, for this, and for this. And I can then pull these across there, there, and there. Okay, so now we'll turn back on my west elevation, if I can find it. There we go. And we'll go ahead and start to draw. Oh, I need the base. I need the base here. One more. Back on my guides. And we'll go again at my floor level. It should be right there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and draw. And I'll switch to my west elevation. I'll go to lines. And I'll draw the first piece, which would be right here to there, and back down to there. The next piece would be this building from there to there. So I'll go up to here, over to there, and down to there. This little piece is part of the same building, so we'll continue from there to there. And then the last one is from here to there, over and down. So if I were to turn off the guides, right, we could see that, and let me turn off the topography again. We could see that I created that elevation by pulling these heights around to build that side. Make sense so far? Okay. Now I need the topos for this. So I'm going to create a brand new guides layer. And we'll call this guides 4. So you see that I don't hesitate when I'm creating guides, right? Lots of layers helps your organization. So we'll do guides 4. It's again a non-printing layer, and we'll make it active. And I also need to turn on the topography. So now I need that bounding box. So I'll draw it again from this corner to there and to right there. Perfect. There's my bounding box. So this elevation is coplanar with this edge. So I'll do a X-line, construction line, that goes in that direction. And I will once again mark the points at which it crosses the topo. So we'll go, let me do a ray right there, right there, right there, and right there. So again, I have to do it from at least 4 of the contours. And now we'll turn back off the contours. And I'll do the same thing. So an X line somewhere down here, going off in that direction. Then I'll offset the X line by 1 foot. There. There. And now should I start at this corner or should I start at that corner to go up? Right, if I'm looking at the topography, it's sloping uphill over here, so I need to start at this corner. So I'll go to the west elevation layer, and I'll again go to my spline, and I'll go there, 1 level up, another level up, and at last this level up. And then I'll take this line and change the thickness so that you can see, oops, what it looks like. There it is. Okay, so I have that piece of topography drawn, but I need to know where it matches up with the edge of the building. And so this is where it gets a little bit tricky because you have to sort out where these various pieces fall on the building. Okay? So what I need to know is I need to know at this level here, right? Again, we're going to that corner there. Where does this fall? So if coming down and it falls right to there, so let me do a reflecting line from that corner. So I'll do a ray from right there, and it should be at, let me turn off ortho for a second, it should be at 315 there. And I need to know where this crosses that topo. So it crosses right there. And it should cross at an intersection. But it's conveniently not giving me an intersection. How nice, right? There we go. All right, so we'll pull it straight down to there, and we'll pull it straight across there. And now, if I were to pull a ray down right along that line, this topo needs to be moved up from right there to where those two lines cross, right there. So it's a little bit of reverse engineering to figure out where that belongs on the building. After you have it, though, we can get rid of a few of these extra lines. We can go through and do the extend, just as we did before. So I'll type extend, and we'll select all of these lines. And I'll go through and I'll extend them all so that they match up nicely with the ground. Okay? So my goal for you today is to at least get one elevation done. Ultimately, for your assignment 105, you're going to need all 4 elevations, so the more you get done, the better. But we're shooting to get 1 elevation done. Remember to turn all your layers on if you decide to rotate them and not draw them upside down. If you want to do a sloping roof on top of your building, that's perfectly fine, but I would recommend establishing your basic elevations first with a ceiling height of 8 or 10 feet, maybe 12 feet, depending. And then after you've done your elevation as kind of a flat top, then we'll come back and add your roofs to it. Okay? But I don't want to sit here and have you keep listening to me any longer than you already have. All right? Are there any questions? No? All right.